Hi, I'm Sue Burnett with Monarch Financial Advisors, and on today's episode of Monarch Mythbusters, we're going to tackle the myth that people spend less in retirement than they did when they were actively working. Now, when you retire, you probably don't have a lot of the big expenses that we think of when we're working in our 30s, 40s, and maybe 50s. So you may have your mortgage paid off, and you may not have kids in college. These are usually the two big expenses that we think of during that part of our life. Also, you're no longer going to have the cost associated with having a job. You might not have to spend gas money to commute, or you might not have to put money into clothes if you need to look nice for client meetings. So yes, these are all expenses that you probably won't have when you retire. But let's talk about the three phases of retirement, and I would argue that for 2 out of the 3, your expenses are going to be at least as much, if not more, than they were when you were working. So let's talk about the very first phase of retirement, those first 5-10 years after you retire. These are your GoGo years, right? You are going to take all the trips that you promised yourself when you retired. And you're going to do all of those house projects that you promised yourself you would do once you retired. And if you're anything like my husband, any new house project generally means a couple new tools because you need to have the right tool to get it all done. Well, with all of these extra expenses and taking these great trips to celebrate the fact that you're no longer working, I would argue that the expenses in your GoGo years may be more than what you were paying for expenses when you were working. Also, if you retired before age 65, you're going to have healthcare coverage costs where maybe you didn't have them before if your employer covered your healthcare. So not only are you going to have the cost for all of these great trips and house projects, but you're also going to have the cost of health insurance. Now, after the GoGo years, that's when we get into the Slogo years. So you're not taking big trips around the world. You're probably more taking trips to go visit family. Maybe you're taking a cruise. You're slowing down a little bit. This might be the time in your life when you decide to downsize. You move from a 4-bedroom house to a condo because you're going to see your family, you're going to see kids and grandkids, and you just don't need that big of a place anymore. This would be the part of retirement that I would agree your spending in this phase is probably less than what your spending was when you were working. But then after your Slogo years, that final phase of retirement, we call your NoGo years. You're older, you're tired out. If people want to see you, they come to you. And so your traveling expenses are definitely low. But what kicks up at this point? Healthcare costs and medical costs. So you might have more specialists at this time in your life. You might be on more prescription drugs. You might be in a nursing home facility or a long-term care facility. You might need a nurse to come in and check on you every day. So at this point in your life, even though you're not traveling anywhere, the medical costs could really push your annual expenses way over what you had when you were actively working and might not have had that many medical costs. So when we look at retirement as a whole, depending on how long you spend in each of those 3 phases, I would argue that the spending throughout retirement may absolutely exceed what you were spending when you were working. So depending on where you're going to go in your GoGo years or where you might end up in your NoGo years, your expenses might be a lot higher than you think. The key is to plan for it. Happy Monday. Let's make it a great week.